Hello, this is Miss Yetter, and we're continuing reading our book, Hollow City, which is the second novel in Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. We are on chapter 8, so if you'll open your books and turn to page 206, we will do chapter 8, part 1. Emma nudged me. So, I need another minute, I said. Rowan had set down her trunk, and I was standing on it now, head above the crowd, casting my eyes over a shifting sea of faces. The long platform teemed with children. They squirmed like amoebas under a microscope, row upon row receding into a haze of smoke. Hissing black trains loomed up on either side, anxious to swallow them. I could feel my friend's eyes on my back, watching me as I scanned the crowd. I was supposed to know whether somewhere in that great seething mass there were monsters who meant to kill us, and I was supposed to know it simply by looking, by assessing some vague feeling in my gut. Usually it was painful and obvious when a hollow was nearby. But in a giant space like this, among hundreds of people, my warning might only be a whisper, the faintest twinge, easy to miss. Do the whites know we're coming? Browin asked, talking low for fear she'd be overheard by a normal. Or worse yet, a white? They had ears everywhere in the city, or so we'd been led to believe. We killed every one of them that might have known where we were going, Hugh said proudly, or rather I did, which means they'll be looking for us even harder, Mildred said. And they'll want more than the bird now. They'll want revenge, which is why we can't stand here much longer, Emma said, tapping me on the leg. Are you almost finished? My focus slipped. I lost my place in the crowd. Began again. One more minute, I said. Personally, it wasn't whites that concerned me most, but hollows. I'd killed 2 of them now, and each encounter had nearly been the end of me. My luck, if that's what you had been keeping me alive thus far, had to be running out. That's why I was determined never to be surprised by another hollow. I would be everything in my power to sense them from a distance and avoid contact altogether. There was less glory in running away from a fight, sure, but I didn't care about glory. I just wanted to survive. The real danger then wasn't the figures on the platform, but the shadows that lay between and beyond them, the darkness at the margins. That's where I focused my attention. It gave me an out-of-body sort of feeling to cast my sense out into a crowd this way, prodding distant corners for traces of danger. It wasn't something I could have done a few days ago. My ability to direct it like a spotlight, this was new. What else, I wondered, was left to discover about myself? We're okay, I said, stepping down from the trunk. No hollows. I could have told you that, grumbled Enoch. If there had been, they'd have eaten us by now. Emma took me aside. If we're to have a fighting chance here, you've got to be faster. It was like asking someone who'd learned to swim to compete in the Olympics. I'm doing my best, I said. Emma nodded. I know you are. She turned to the others and snapped her fingers for attention. Let's head for the phone box, she said, pointing to a tall red phone booth across the platform, just visible through the surging crowd. Who are we calling? Hugh asked. The peculiar dog said that all of London's loops had been raided and their emblems kidnapped, Emma said. But we can't simply take his word for it, can we? You can call a time loop, I said, flabbergasted on the phone. On the phone, Mildred explained that the Council of Embrems maintained a phone exchange, though it could be used only within the boundaries of the city. Quite ingenious how it works, given all the time differences, he said. Just because we live in time loops doesn't mean we're stuck in the Stone Age. Emma took my hand and told the others to join hands too. It's crucial we stay together, she said. London is vast, and there's no lost and found here for peculiar children. We waded into the crowd, hands linked, our snaking line slightly parabolic in the middle, where Olive buoyed up like an astronaut walking on the moon. You losing weight? Bronwyn asked her. You need heavier shoes, little magpie? I get feathery when I ain't had proper meals, Olive said. Proper meals? We just ate like kings. Not me, said Olive. They didn't have any meat pies. They're awfully picky. You're awfully picky for a refugee, said Enoch. Anyways, since Horace wasted all our money, the only way we're getting more food is if we steal it, or find a not kidnapped Embrem who will cook us some. We still have money, Horace said defensively, jingling the coins in his pocket, though not enough for meat pies. We could perhaps afford a jacket potato. If I have another jacket potato, I'll turn into a jacket potato, Olive whined. That's impossible, dear, said Bronwyn. Why? Miss Peregrine can turn into a bird. A boy we were passing turned to stare. Bronwyn shushed Olive angrily. Telling our secrets in front of normals was strictly forbidden. Even if they were so fantastic sounding, no one would believe them. We shouldered through one last knot of children to arrive at the phone booth. It was only large enough to hold 3, so Emma, Millard, and Horace squeezed inside while the rest of us crowded around the door. Emma worked the phone. Horace fished our last few coins from his pocket, and Millard paged through a chunky phone book that dangled from a cord. Are you kidding? I said, leaning into the booth. There are emblems in the phone book? The addresses listed are fake, said Millard. And the calls won't connect unless you whistle the right passcode. He tore out a listing and handed it to Emma. Give this one a go. Millicent Thrush. Horace fed a coin into the slot and Emma dialed the phone number. Then Millard took the phone, whistling a bird call into the receiver, and handed it back to Emma. She listened for a moment, then frowned. It just rings, she said. No one's picking up. No bother, Millard said. That was just one of many. Let me find another. Outside the booth, the crowd that had been flowing around us slowed to a stop, bottlenecking somewhere out of sight. The train platform was reaching capacity. There were normal children on every side of us, chattering to one another, shouting, shoving, and one who stood right next to Olive was crying bitterly. She had pigtails and puffy red eyes, and she carried a basket in one hand and a raggedy cardboard suitcase in the other. Pinned to her blouse was a tag with words and numbers stenciled in large print. 115-201, London, Sheffield. Olive watched the girl cry until her own eyes began to shimmer with tears. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore and asked what the matter was. The girl looked away, pretending not to have heard. Olive didn't take the hint. What's the matter? She asked again. Are you crying because you've been sold? She pointed to the tag on the girl's blouse. Was that your price? The girl tried to scoot away, but was blocked by a wall of people. I would buy you and set you free, Olive went on. But I fear we've spent all our money on train tickets and haven't enough even for meat pies, much less a slave. I'm awfully sorry. The girl spun to face Olive. I'm not for sale, she said, stamping her foot. Are you certain? Yes, the girl shouted, and in a fit of frustration, she ripped the tag off her blouse and threw it away. I just don't want to go and live in the stupid country, that's all. I didn't want to leave my home either, but we had to, Olive said. It got smashed by a bomb. The girl's face softened. Mine did too. She put down her suitcase and held out her hand. Sorry I got cross. My name is Jessica. I'm Olive. The two girls shook hands like gentlemen. I like your blouse, Olive said. Thanks, said Jessica. And I like the what's it on your hand? My tiara? Olive reached up to touch it. It isn't real silver, though. That's okay, it's pretty. Olive smiled as wide as I'd ever seen her smile, and then a loud whistle blew, and a booming voice crackled over a loudspeaker. All children onto the trains, it said. Nice and orderly now. The crowd began to flow around us again. Here and there, adults herded the children along, and I heard one say, Don't worry, you'll see your mummies and daddies again soon. That's when I realized why there were so many children here. They were being evacuated. Of all the many hundreds of kids in the train station this morning, my friends and I were the only ones arriving. The rest were leaving, being shuttled out of the city for their own safety. And from the look of the winter coats and overstuffed cases some of them carried, maybe for a long time. I have to go, Jessica said, and Olive had hardly begun to say goodbye when her new friend was borne away by the crowd toward a waiting train. Just that quickly, Olive made and lost the only normal friend she'd ever had. Jessica looked back as she was boarding. Her grim expression seemed to say, What will become of me? We watched her go and wondered the same about ourselves. Inside the phone booth, Emma scowled at the receiver. No one's answering, she said. All the numbers just ring and ring. Last one, said Millard, handing her another ripped out page. Cross your fingers. I was focused on Emma as she dialed, but then a commotion broke out behind me, and I turned to see a crimson-faced man waving an umbrella at us. What are you dialing about for? He said. Vacate the phone box and board your train at once. We just got off one, said Hugh. We ain't about to get on another. And what have you done with your tag numbers? The man shouted, flecks of spittle flying from his lips. Produce them at once, or by God, I'll have you shipped somewhere a great deal less pleasant than Wales. Piss off this instant, said Enoch, or we'll have you shipped straight to hell. The man's face went so purple I thought he'd burst a blood vessel in his neck. Clearly, he wasn't used to being spoken to this way by children. I said, get out of that phone box, he roared, and raised the umbrella over his head like an executioner's axe. He brought it down on the cable that stretched between the top of the booth and the wall, snapping it in half with a loud thwack. The phone went dead. Emma looked up from the receiver, boiling with quiet rage. If he wants to use the phone so badly, she said, then let's give it to him. As she, Millard, and Horace squeezed out of the booth, Bronwyn grabbed the man's hands and pinned them behind his back. Stop, she screamed. Unhand me. "Oh, I'll unhand you," said Rowan. And then she picked him up, stuffed him head first into the booth, and barred the door shut with his umbrella. The man screamed and banged on the glass, jumping up and down like a fat fly trapped in a bottle. Although it would have been fun to stick around and laugh at him, the man had drawn too much attention, and now adults were converging on us from all across the station. It was time to go. We linked hands and raced off toward the turnstiles, leaving behind us a wake of tripped and flailing normals. A train whistle screeched and was echoed inside Rowan's trunk, where Miss Peregrine was being tossed around like laundry in the wash. Too light on her feet to run, Olive clung to Rowan's neck, trailing behind her like a half-deflated balloon on a string. Some of the adults were closer to the exit than we were, and rather than running around them, we tried to barrel straight through. This didn't work. The first to intercept us was a big woman who smacked Enoch upside the head with her purse, then tackled him. When Emma tried to pull her off, two men grabbed her by the arms and wrestled her to the floor. I was about to jump in and help her when a third man grabbed my arms. "Someone do something," Bronwyn cried. We all knew what she meant, but it wasn't clear which of us was free to act. Then a bee whizzed past Enoch's nose and buried its stinger in the haunches of the woman sitting astride him, and she squealed and leapt up. "Yes," Enoch shouted, "more bees." "They're tired," Hugh shouted back. "They only just got to sleep after saving you the last time." But he could see that there was no other way. Emma's arms were pinned. Bronwyn was busy protecting both her trunk and Olive from a trio of angry train conductors, and there were more adults on the way, so Hugh began pounding his chest as if trying to dislodge a piece of stuck food. A moment later, he let out a reverberating belch, and 10 or so bees flew out of his mouth. They did a few circles overhead, then got their bearings and began stinging every adult in sight. The man holding Emma dropped her and fled. The one holding me got stung right on the tip of his nose, and he hollered and flapped his arms as if possessed by demons. Soon all the adults were running, trying to defend themselves from tiny, stinging attackers with spastic dance moves. To the delight of all the children still on the platform, we laughed and cheered and threw their arms in the air in imitation of the ridiculous elders. With everyone thus distracted, we picked ourselves up, bolted from the turnstiles, and ran out into a bustling London afternoon. We became lost in the chaos of the streets. It felt like we'd been plunged into a jar of stirring liquid, racing with particles, gentlemen, ladies, laborers, soldiers, street kids, and beggars, all rushing purposefully in every direction, waving around tiny, sputtering cars and cart vendors, carrying their wares, and buckers blowing horns, and buses blowing horns, and shuddered to a stop to spill more people into the teeming sidewalks. Containing all of this was a cannon of column-fronted buildings that stretched to vanishing down a street half in shadow. The afternoon sun, low and muted, reduced by the smokes of London to a murky glow, a lantern winking through fog. Dizzy from it, I half closed my eyes and let Emma pull me along, while with my free hand I reached into my pocket to touch the cold glass of my phone. I found this strangely calming. My phone was a useless relic of the future, but an object which retained some power nevertheless. That of a long, thin filament connecting this baffling world to the sane and recognizable one I'd once belonged to. A thing that said to me as I touched it, "You are here, and this is real, and you are not dreaming, and you are still you," and somehow that made everything around me vibrate a little less quickly. Enoch had spent his formative years in London and claimed to still know its streets, so he led. We stuck mostly to alleys and back lanes, which made the city seem at first like a maze of gray walls and gutter pipes. Its grandness reveled in glimpses as we dashed across wide boulevards and back to the safety of shadows. We made a game of it, laughing, racing one another between alleys. Horace pretended to trip over a curb, then bounced up nimbly and bowed like a dancer, tipping his hat. We laughed like mad, strangely giddy, half in disbelief that we'd made it this far. Across the water, through the woods, past snarling hollows and death squads of whites, all the way to London. We put a good long way between us and the train station, and then stopped in an alley by some trash cans to catch our breath. Bronwyn set down her trunk and lifted Miss Peregrine out, and she wobbled drunkenly across the cobblestones. Horace and Millard broke out laughing. "What's so funny?" said Bronwyn. "It ain't Miss P's fault she's dizzy." Horace swept his arms out grandly. "Welcome to beautiful London," he said. "It's ever so much grander than you described it, Enoch. And oh, did you describe it? For 75 years, London, 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 the greatest city on earth." Millard picked up a trash can lid. "London, the finest refuge available anywhere." Horace doffed his hat. "London, where even the rats wear top hats." "Oh, I didn't go on about it like that much," Enoch said. "You did," said Olive. "Well, that's not how they do things in London, you'd say. Or in London, the food is much finer." "Obviously, we're not on a grand tour of the city right now," Enoch said defensively. "Would you rather walk through alleys or be spotted by whites?" Horace ignored him. "London, where every day is a holiday for the trash man." He broke down laughing, and his laughter was infectious. Soon nearly all of us were giggling, even Enoch. "I suppose I did glamorize it a bit," he admitted. "I don't see what's so amazing about London," Olive said with a frown. "It's dirty and smelly and full of cruel, nasty people who make children cry, and I hate it." She scrunched her face into a scowl and added, "And I'm becoming quite peckish," which made us all laugh harder. "Those people in the station were nasty," said Millard, "but they got what they deserved. I'll never forget that man's face when Bronwyn stuffed him into the phone box, or that horrible woman when she got stung in the bum by a bee," said Enoch. "I'd pay money to see that again." I glanced at Hugh, expecting him to chime in, but his back was to us, his shoulders trembling. "Hugh," I said, "you all right?" He shied away. "No one gives a whit," he said. "Don't bother checking on old Hugh. He's just here to save everyone's headquarters with no word of thanks from anybody." Shamed, we offered him our thanks and apologies. "Sorry, Hugh." "Thanks again, Hugh." "You're our man in a pinch, Hugh." He turned to face us. "They were friends, you know." "We still are," said Olive. "Not you, my bees." They can only sting once, and then it's lights out. The big hive in the sky. And now I've only Henry left. And he can't fly 'cause he's missing a wing. He put out his hand and slowly opened the fingers, and there in his palm was Henry, waving his only wing at us. Come on, mate, Hugh whispered to it. Time to go home. He stuck out his tongue, set the bee upon it, and closed his mouth. Enoch patted him on the shoulder. I'd bring them back to life for you, but I'm not sure it would work on creatures so small. Thanks anyway, Hugh said, and then he cleared his throat and wiped his cheeks roughly, as if annoyed at his tears for exposing him. We'll find you more just as soon as we get Miss P fixed up, said Bronwyn. Speaking of which, Enoch said to Emma, did you manage to get through to any embryos on that phone? Not a one, Emma replied, then sat down on an overturned trash can, her shoulders slumping. I was really hoping we might catch a bit of good luck for once, but no. Then it seems the dog was correct, said Horace. The great loops of London have fallen to our enemies. He bowed his head solemnly. The worst has come to pass. All our embryos have been kidnapped. We all bowed our heads, our gritty mood gone. In that case, said Enoch, Millard, you'd better tell us all you know about the punishment loop. If that's where the embryos are, we're going to have to stage a rescue. No, said Millard. No. What do you mean, no, said Emma. Millard made a strangled noise in his throat and started breathing weird. I mean, we can't. He couldn't seem to get the words out. What's wrong with him, said Bronwyn. Mill, what's the matter? You'd better explain right now what you mean by no, Emma said threateningly. Because we'll die, that's why, Millard said, his voice breaking. But back at the menagerie, you made it sound so easy, I said, like we could just waltz into a punishment loop. Millard was hyperventilating, hysterical, and it scared me. Bronwyn found a crumpled paper bag and told him to breathe into it. When he'd recovered a bit, he answered, getting into one is easy enough, he said, speaking slowly, working to control his breath. Getting out again is trickier. Getting out alive, I should say. Punishment loops are everything the dog and worse. Rivers of fire, bloodthirsty Vikings, pestilence so thick you can't breathe, and mixed into all that, like some devilish bullabass, bird knows how many whites and hollow gassed. Well, that's fantastic, said Horace, tossing up his hands. You might have told us earlier, like back at the menagerie when we were planning all this. Would it have made any difference, Horace? He took a few more breaths from the bag. If I'd made it sound more frightening, would you have chosen to simply let Miss Peregrine humanity expire? Of course not, said Horace, but you should have told us the truth. Millard let the bag drop. His strength was returning, and his conviction with it. I admit I somewhat downplayed the punishment loop's dangers, but I never thought we'd actually have to go into them, despite all that irritating dog's doomsaying about the state of London. I was certain we'd find at least one unrated loop here, its embryos still present and accounted for, and for all we know, we may still. How can we be sure they've all been kidnapped? Have we seen their rated loops with our own eyes? What if the embryos' phones were simply disconnected? All of them, Enoch scoffed. Even Olive, eternally optimistic Olive, shook her head at that. Then what do you suggest, Millard? Said Emma. that we tour London's loops and hope to find someone still at home? And what would you say the odds are that the corrupted who are looking for us would leave all those loops unguarded? I think we'd have a better chance of surviving the night if we spent it playing Russian roulette, said Enoch. All I mean, Millard said, is that we have no proof. What more proof do you want? Said Emma. Pools of blood, a pile of plucked Imbram feathers. Miss Avset told us the corrupted assault began here weeks ago. Miss Wren clearly believed that all of London's Imbrams had been kidnapped. Do you know better than Miss Wren? An Imbram herself? And now we're here, and none of the loops are answering their telephones. So please, tell me why going loop to loop would be anything other than a suicidally dangerous waste of time. Wait a minute, that's it, Millard exclaimed. What about Miss Wren? What about her, said Emma. Don't you remember what the dog told us? Miss Wren came to London a few days ago when she heard that her sister Imbrams had been kidnapped. So, what if she's still here? Then she's probably been captured by now, said Enoch. And if she hasn't, Millard's voice was bright with hope. She could help Miss Peregrine, and then we wouldn't have to go anywhere near the punishment loops. And how would you suggest we find her? Enoch said shrilly. Shout her name from the rooftops? This isn't Cairnholm. It's a city of millions. Her pigeons, said Millard. Come again? It was Miss Wren's peculiar pigeons who told her where the Imbrams had been taken. If they knew where all the other Imbrams went, then they should know where Miss Wren is, too. They belong to her, after all. Ha, said Enoch. The only thing commoner here than plain-looking middle-aged ladies are flocks of pigeons. And you want to search all of London for one flock in particular? It does seem a bit mad, Emma said. Sorry, Mill. I just don't see how that could work. Then it's lucky thing for you I spend our train ride studying rather than making idle gossip. Someone hand me the tales. Rowan fished the book from her trunk and gave it to him. Millard dove right in, flipping pages. There are many answers to be found within, he said, if you only know what to look for. He stopped at a certain page and stabbed the top with his finger. Aha, he said, turning the book to show us what he'd found. The title of the story was The Pigeons of St. Paul's. I'll be blessed, said Rowan. Could those be the same pigeons we're talking about? If they're written about in the tales, they're almost certainly peculiar pigeons, said Millard. And how many flocks of peculiar pigeons could there possibly be? Olive clapped her hands and cried, Millard, you're brilliant. Thank you, yes, I was aware. Wait, I'm lost, I said. What's St. Paul's? Even I know that, said Olive. The cathedral. And she went to the end of the alley and pointed up at a giant domed roof raising in the distance. It's the largest and most magnificent cathedral in London, said Millard. And if my hunch is correct, it's also the nesting place of Miss Wren's pigeons. Let's hope they're at home, said Emma, and that they've got some good news for us. We've had quite a drought of it lately. As we navigated a labyrinth of narrow streets toward the cathedral, a brooding quiet settled over us. For long stretches no one spoke, leaving only the tap of our shoes on pavement and the sound of the city. Airplanes, the ever-present hum of traffic, sirens that warbled and pitch shifted around us. The farther we got from the train station, the more evidence we saw the bombs that had been raining down on London, fronts pocked with shrapnel, shattered windows, streets that glinted with frost and powdered glass. The sky was speckled with puffy silver blimps tethering to the ground by long webs of cable. Barrage balloons, Emma said when she saw me craning my neck toward one. The German bombers got caught up in their cables at night and crashed. Then we came upon a scene of destruction so bizarre that I had to stop and gap at it. Not out of some morbid voyeurism, but because it was impossible for my brain to process without further study. A bomb crater yawned across the whole width of the street like a monstrous mouth with broken pavement for teeth. At one edge, the blast had sheared away the front wall of the building, but left what was inside mostly intact. It looked like a doll's house, its interior rooms all exposed to the street. The dining room with its table still set for a meal, family pictures knocked crooked in a hallway, but still hanging, a roll of toilet paper unspooled and caught in the breeze, waving in the air like a long white flag. Did they forget to finish building it? Olive asked. No, dummy, said Enoch. It got hit by a bomb. For a moment, Olive looked as if she might cry, but then her face went hard and she shook her fist at the sky and yelled, Nasty Hitler, stop this horrible war and go right away altogether. Bronwyn patted her arm. Shh, he can't hear you, love. It isn't fair, Olive said. I'm tired of airplanes and bombs and war. We all are, said Enoch, even me. Then I heard Horace scream, and I spun around to see him pointing at something in the road. I ran to see what it was, and then I did see, and I stopped frozen, my brain shouting, run away, but my legs refusing to listen. It was a pyramid of heads. They were blackened and carved mouths agape. Eyes boiled shut, melted and pulled together in the gutter like some hydra-headed horror. Then Emma came to see and gasped and turned away. Bronwyn came and started moaning. Hugh gagged and clapped his hands over his eyes. And then finally Enoch, who seemed not in the least disturbed, calmly nudged one of the heads with his shoe and pointed out that they were only mannequins made of wax, having spilled from the display window of a bombed wig shop. We all felt a little ridiculous, but somehow no less horrified, because even though the heads weren't real, they represented something that was, hidden beneath the rubble around us. Let's go, Emma said. This place is nothing but a graveyard. We walked on. I tried to keep my eyes to the ground, but there was no shutting out all the ghastly things we passed. A scattered ruin, belching smoke, the only fireman dispatched to extinguish it, slouched in defeat, blistered and weary, his hose run dry. Yet there he stood watching anyway, as if, lacking water, his job now was to bear witness. A baby in a stroller left alone in the street, bawling. Bronwyn slowed, overcome. Can't we help them somehow? It wouldn't make any difference, said Millard. These people belong to the past, and the past can't be changed. Bronwyn nodded sadly. She'd known it was true, but had needed to hear it said. We were barely here, ineffectively as ghosts. A cloud of ash billowed, blotting out fireman and child. We went on, choked in an eddy of wind-borne wreck dust. Powdered concrete blanching our clothes, our faces bone white.